So here's the setup for this thing. We are talking about conductive filament. Well, this is what's happening recently in class, and the conductive filament is not very conductive. It has a very high resistance, and so therefore we need to use quite a bit of it to get the current that we need to have. Okay, so there's that. That's what this is. But this exercise here is a very basic beginner level fusion project. However, it covers a handful of, let's say, intermediate features. So instead of a typical lab where I start with something very basic and then another one that's a little bit more advanced, this is the thing that we need, and so we're going to cover a handful of things all at once. And I'm going to try to make this short and probably multiple short little videos. Okay, so here's the part. Here's kind of what we're doing, but it's not complete. We stopped right here. This needs a little bit of modification. So you can see that this little pad here at the end is sticking out. The idea, what's going on here, is this would be the trace, and because you can't solder to the filament, this will end up actually being a hole here. These are the two conductors, right? And there'll be a hole that goes through this, and you could run a fastener into it with a washer and twist the wire around it, and that would be the deal. And then maybe over here somewhere another wire and or whatever, an LED. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we want to model up is the carrier. I can tell you, by the way, just so you can see what's coming, we're going to be doing very basic part creation. A square. It's a square block, but then we have to carve some square blocks out of it, and we're going to make a couple mistakes, or it's not exactly a mistake when you don't know what it is that you're quite making and you're kind of inventing it. Then later, as you get down the road, you go, okay, well, maybe I shoulda, coulda, woulda done a little bit differently. We're going to do that so that we can go back in time and talk about editing objects back here, okay? And then possibly even redoing maybe even the whole entire thing, because you get the whole thing done. It looks like it's functional, but it looks like crap down here, because that's a concept in itself too, organization of your trees and timelines here. And you want to make it better, so you just redo it. Okay, so we'll go over here, and the first thing we're going to do is make a rectangle. And I did not look to see what size that rectangle is. Notice I'm scrolling with the scroll wheel here. I can zoom in and out, and it's not usually very helpful at this point in time. However, if you look up here, this is 25 millimeters, 50, 75 millimeters. So if you were down in here and the part is 80 millimeters, you'd probably realize, hopefully, that that's you're zoomed too far in. Okay. So come out here, and I will grab the centered rectangle. This is all these icons up here. Some on mine are placed there by me. Other ones are there by default. The rectangles are all right here. Incidentally, if you wanted to add one up there, pin to toolbar. Okay, so I'm going to go with centered rectangle. I'll click in the center. The center right here is a square, so you watch for the square. Don't later you'll see me snap to lines and other things, and you'll get different little icons, but just make sure you get that square. Click, and don't hold it. Just click and move the mouse out, and then click again, and that solidifies it. The next thing is to put a dimension on this. So let's take a peek over here and see what we did. So we go to this, and we've got 80 by 30. So you see, here's the dimensions. Also notice that the part is black. The black lines here, as opposed to the blue ones, they tell us that it's locked in space. It cannot move anywhere. It's anchored right at that center point. So that was the thing that happened. Those little icons that look like L's right there that just popped out, those are coincidences, and they stick it to that point and various other things. The 80 millimeters locked the height right here. The 30 millimeters locked the width. And at that point in time, the thing turns black. And that's what we want every sketch to be. That's kind of a production rule, is you don't have sketches just hanging around loose like this that you can grab and wiggle around, you see? Okay, so what the hell was that? 30 and 80? Yeah, so 30 and 80. So I'm going to go up here to dimensions, but pay attention to the hotkeys. D is the hotkey for sketch dimensions, so and use them. Okay, so once you see them project, that's the thing later. That's P right there. So I click over here, I hit D, and notice the cursor. It has a, it kind of looks like you're measuring something, right? So I pick right here, and don't just drop it right here in the middle line. That's hard to see. Bring it over here somewhere it's nice and easy. Hit 30. So you see that's kind of small, so I'm going to zoom in, and if I zoom in and it runs off the page, grab this. You don't have to actually let go. You don't have to see that tool. I was going to say something, but you don't understand what I'm talking about. That tool, that dimension, is still there. So if I click on something else, then it's going to try to dimension any of these lines, okay? It's pretty typical when you're done to hit escape, listening keyboard. See, hitting escape a bunch. I'm dropping the tool that I'm using, right? So I hit D and I bring that back. There is my dimension tool. I can click on the side here, click and hit 80, and there we go. Now it's black, just like the other one, you see? So that's fully constrained. Other programs, Katia calls this ISO constrained. That's pretty normal word for this kind of thing. When I'm done, here's the very linear, typical CAD way to do this. When you're done with your sketch environment, you finish. You go finish sketch, or you come over here and you hit finish sketch. So now we're done. Now I can do another thing. The other thing that I would do, I'm holding down the third button on the mouse to rotate this around. How this rotates is in your preference. Go up here and look at the little, your profile, go to preferences, and I have it set to Tinkercad. I'm not going to do that right now. So I can go over here to extrude, and notice it says when that comes out with the picture, well, first off, that's a nice little picture, tells us how to do things, very helpful with Fusion. There's a little E next to it that tells us that it's the E key. If I hit the drop down right here and I go for extrude, there you can see it's the E key, okay? So I come over here, hit E, or I can pick this icon, and it's the only thing in the field right here, so it highlights it, but other times you might have to click in the middle to actually select the thing that you want. Then I can grab this and I can just drag it up. So there you go, that's extruding. I am going up on the Z-axis, so notice that if I move this around, the Z-axis is facing up. That's probably for a while the way you want to have it, so that it's just like us in the world. Up, Z is up, but it doesn't honestly really matter. So now, how thick are we going to make this? I forget again. I'm going to make it 10 for right now, because if I leave the window, I think it's going to disappear. So I exit out of here and I look at this. I can go now to the timeline and I can find the extrude that made this right here, and that's pretty good. So I can double click on this. It is 10 millimeters. You see that right there. The other thing you can do is you can come up here to inspect, and I can pick things. I could pick maybe the length of that line right there, or I could pick that face to that face, and then over, well, in there and over here, it'll tell me that it's 10 millimeters, you see? Okay, so we'll close that. So you can see, maybe, by the way, I'm talking and moving a little bit kind of fast because I know it's a video. I know you can pause it. Also, you notice that we're, again, like I said, not doing the linear, welcome to Fusion 360. We're trying to get a job done, and so I'm kind of, bouncing through a lot of different things. So how are we doing here? What we want to do next then is we want to, we want to carve some slots into this, and what I decided was that our conducting bands here are going to be 5 by 5 millimeters. Okay, so I'm going to put those into here. Before I continue, though, I'm going to hit A for appearance, and I'm going to change the color of this because it is a lot easier to see on the screen. And then also when we get these different bodies in here, the different things that we were just looking at, it's helpful to see them as different colors instead of just gray and gray. Okay, so I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. Doesn't really matter. Okay, hit OK. Close that. And then I need to make some squares in here. But, however, because this is going to go along really, really quick, I'm going to stop this video here. And we'll come back. And the next one, we'll talk about making the extrude cuts into this. Other programs call it pockets. You can think of it that way. Okay, the recesses in this part.